Alright, let's do a custom quilt. I did a video on how I prep the quilt. I will put it at the end of the video on my information bar and I'll post it up here somewhere. But now we're going to custom quilt it. Inside here, stitching the ditch, I have my table. The machine is free motion. I'm going to get my ruler that I created. This is a 1/2 inch. This is 1/4 inch. Try these needles where I'm able to stitch around and leave a tail, and this needle you knot it and then feed the knot through the fabric. We're going to try it. I've never tried this needle, but we're going to give her a try. I did a quilt before. The back fabric was very light and I ended up going back and forth on the seam I already made to lock the stitches in, and it looked like that thread was clunky or chunky in that area, so I kind of wanted to try something different this time. That's the stitch length per inches I'm going to sew on those squares. I am using a dark slate gray or dark gray for the inside of stitching the ditch. I'm going to use a lighter thread on the outside. I stitched in the ditch in those areas, but I didn't film it, and I did use a needle to lock the stitches down. But let me just say this, I don't know if I like it, and I didn't film it because it caused me to have so much more work to lock the stitches down manually instead of allowing my quilting machine just to lock it down, that I got overwhelmed and I didn't film it. But I don't know if I like this style of locking my stitches down, but I think I need to try it in another project and learn how to do this better, because I went in cold. I didn't know how to use this needle and I didn't know how it worked. I already stitched in the ditch and every internal area of the quilt. Alright, after I stitched in the ditch in those areas, I also put all the belts on my long arm quilting machine and got the computer going. In the squares, I'm also going to quilt a gray design. I'm trying to stop wasting time by changing threads. So, okay, I stitched in the ditch. Now I'm going to quilt the inside with the same thread and kind of try to do this as streamlined as possible. But sometimes when you don't know what you're doing, it doesn't work out that way. But that's what I was trying to do. Right now she's quilting inside the squares. There is a way of this Gamble program to where you clip, and it makes a square on the computer, and then you're able to put the design inside the computer. Now, she wanted it densely quilted, so there's 3 sections of this design placed in here, and I'll show you what I mean. The clip, and then here's the one design, another design, and a third design. I told the computer where these little individual squares are and where I want the quilting. Those little squares right there, squares right here. The program's kind of neat because it gives you the ability to place designs specifically in certain areas. For example, that's what the back looks like. Isn't she lovely? You can still see the fabric, but you can see that she is densely quilted. One of the things to keep in mind when you're doing this, it's if you lean on the bar, you will shift where the square is. You shift where the square is, this design is not going to be exactly where you initially put it. With this design, it's really just one design, but I went ahead and put 3 of them together because she wants a lot of quilting in this space. It's really dense quilting, but not so much that it destroys her fabric. It gives a little bit of breathing space, but it is small. Look how little they are. They're not even the size of my nail. And while she is working, I've been stitching in the ditch probably for like 2 hours. It gives me some back freedom, like back relief time. And also it gives me an opportunity to start drawing on the sashing and getting the sashing ready. Densely quilting these squares take about 7 to 8 minutes to quilt. I also wanted to share that the design that she picked, we could have literally just put one of the designs in that rectangle space, but she wanted it densely quilted. And there's this sweet spot where you over quilt an area and you destroy or make the fabric look overloaded, or you don't quilt the fabric enough to where there's a lot of fullness and puddling. And so it's kind of like trying to find that sweet spot. I ended up doing 3 designs in one square, and let me just be clear, it took about 10 minutes to quilt in every square, but it took me 6 hours to plot on the long arm where to put that design and for it to quilt that designated space. I thought it would only take me maybe 2 or 3, but it took me 6. So it took a lot of time to do this. And a lot of it was because of how densely quilted she wanted that space. Another thing that I'm doing is, before I would find placement and then I would be trying to remove all these basting stitches. But when you do placement, you can't be moving the quilt anymore because it will misalign it'll misalign the design from being exactly center. You could kind of see little smidgets of misalignment, which I think that's okay. It's just where it started, but I can't find alignment until I get all these basting stitches off, because what I was doing is I was trying to do alignment for that row, let's say, and I was removing the basting stitches here, and it was shifting the design, and I had to unstitch a whole square. I was like, I want to be a longer. You don't know. It's work like any other work. You don't know. And then I had to unstitch a whole square. It was horrible. I want to be a longer. You don't know. You sometimes can spend a whole day unstitching a quilt because you screwed it up. You're dealing with someone who invested like hundreds of dollars in something. Ugh, pressure. And this fabric is from China, I believe. Can't replace it. It's precious to my client, so it better be precious to me. And so I had to unstitch one whole area because I was like, oh my god, I can't do it like that. Though I want to, but I can't. I don't want to. I want it beautiful for my client. I want my client just to love my work. I want to love my work. You know what I mean? I want to love my work. So here I'm removing all the basting stitches, and then I could plot my squares down. I'm trying to get all the thread out of the way. So custom quilting is very thready. She's gonna be a beautiful quilt. Okay, let's go.